Welcome everyone. Um, we are going to get started here. You're just saying it's such a beautiful evening outside, so it's a little bit quiet this evening, but we're so excited to have you here and so excited to have special guest Kim Nguyen with us. Kim is one of our trusted partners, mortgage broker, and she has helped a variety of our clients from first-time home buyers to um, to more seasoned investors. So we're so excited to have her. She's been in the business for over 15 years now, right, Kim? Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
long time coming.
Yeah, yeah. So she's going to be providing some insight, and we're going to be talking about buy now or wait. With there's been a lot of uncertainty in our market with everything that's been going on with economics and politics, and we've been finding that a lot of clients and buyers are sitting on the fence, not sure what to do. So Kim's going to be talking about some different strategies that can be employed, and kind of an analyzing and breaking things down too. And we're looking at, okay, what it would have been like if maybe we purchased last year versus now we're looking today. So we're really excited for that. And we have a few of the members from Phipps Real Estate Group on the call here as well. So Heather's going to be starting us off with a market update, just talking about in general kind of what's going on in Calgary with the market. So we're going to get started and kind of jump right into there. Okay. All right. All right, Heather, I'm going to hand things over to you
Perfect.
to get started.
Perfect. I'm just going to move our screen. Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Fabris with the Phipps Group, as Andrea said. So, as of May 1st, Calgary and the surrounding areas are starting to notice a little bit of shifts. So, that's in sales activity, that's in pricing, and that's in the inventory levels. So, if you look for sales, there was 2,236 sales in the month of April. That's down 22.3%. And that's a decrease from year over year. Now, new listings, there was 4,038 new listings in April. So that made an increase of 15.7%. And that made our inventory go to 5,867 homes. And that's an increase of 115.5%. So we currently have about 2.62 months worth of supply, which is an increase of 177% year over year. And the average days on market is 29%, which is an increase of 41.1. Now, in saying that, inventory rose more than double of last year's levels, but it's bringing it back to what is typical for April figures. We have moved more to a shifted balance with almost 3 months supply, and our sales were down 22%, but they're in line with long-term trends. One thing I was going to say, not all areas are balanced. If the house is priced right and it's the right type of property in the right area, we are still seeing strong demand for those houses, and even sometimes still a little bit of a bidding war. So the benchmark price citywide was 591,100, which is down 1.5% from last April, but it's still fairly stable month over month, with an average home price increase of 6.3% year over year to $646,743. So this shows that there's still demand in certain market segments. If you go to the next slide.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to just add to that, Heather.
Oh,
I think we
yeah.
might be chatting about it maybe a little bit more. Oh, yeah, on property type is it definitely seems like where we're seeing some separation is within the affordable detached properties,
Yeah.
within that kind of 400 to 700,000 range is where things are still quite competitive and inventory is tight. Whereas in the condo market, we're seeing an influx of new inventory, especially with new construction and in some of the newer communities and areas. So there is that difference. And I think that's what kind of you're going to jump into here a little bit more. But I find it's hard sometimes when we're looking at the city as a whole, we want to have a general picture, but it's so important to look at the community and property type.
Absolutely, because not only that, but as I think you've mentioned previously, Calgary is so big. We have so much land. So when you start looking on the perimeters of Calgary, there's so much new construction and builders are putting up more condo buildings. So you can see that there is more vacancy and more houses for sale in inventory. Whereas if you come a little bit inner city, then obviously you don't usually see as much inventory typically right now. So even though overall sales are down in all property types, the actual benchmark price, they're up in detached and semi-detached homes. They stayed the same for townhouses and they increased by 0.2% in apartment condos. The average prices did rise in all property types except semi-detached. So just looking at this picture, your detached homes, there was 1,102 sales in April, down 16.6%. The benchmark price was up 2.4% to 769,300, but the average price was actually up 5.4% to 839,250. Your semi-detached saw 190 sales, so down 25%. Benchmark price 691,700 at 3.6% of an increase. And the average price was 695,043 homes. And that's down not homes, sorry, price. That's down 0.3%. For your row or your townhouse, there was 355 sales in April, down 27%. The benchmark price was 457,400. And the average price was 486,708, and that was up 3.1%. I'm not sure about the zero next to the benchmark. I'm thinking that might be a typo. I'll get back to that. Apartment, there was 589 sales, down 28%. The benchmark price was 336,000, up 0.2%, and the average price was $367,442 at an increase of 2.5%.
I think to note here, so yeah, we're seeing on all property type sales have been down year over year, so compared to this time last year. But really, like Heather touched on at the beginning, it's a reflection of things balancing out. So we were in such extreme sellers market conditions last spring around this time, and now we're just moving into that more balanced conditions. Despite sales being down, though, prices have still increased. So that I think that really speaks to the continued demand. So more inventory is coming on, but properties are still selling.
And I double check my numbers. The benchmark for the row townhouse, it is flat at 0. So it hasn't gone up or down. So economic uncertainty has softened, obviously, the sales, but the activity still is surpassing our pre-pandemic levels. Home prices are holding steady month over month with subtle gains in higher demand categories. Lower priced detached and semi-detached homes are still facing tight supply, like Andrea had mentioned. And your detached and your semi-detached prices are up over 2% from last year. So, some buyer tips. Now is the time to breathe. We have more time and for more options. So we have more breathing room as a buyer to explore your options without as much pressure as we did in the seller's market. You don't have to necessarily, not always, but you don't have to be ready to put an offer in the very first minute that you see the property. There is room to negotiate. So a balanced market is great time to negotiate, especially on listings that have been sitting for a while. And also, the other thing is to expand your criteria and maximize your value. So, with more listings being on the market, you can broaden your search filters, maybe go a little higher than you thought you could go. And it will maybe help reveal stronger opportunities because if those properties have been sitting for quite a while, there is room to negotiate and potentially get it for the price that you were hoping for.
Yeah, that's great. Kim and I were just chatting a little bit right before we started the call, and I think it's so interesting that in general, we're seeing that these more balanced conditions, but there are still definitely areas where things are competitive. So that's where you're wanting to work with your team of realtor and mortgage broker to ensure that you are prepared, especially if you're looking more inner city or in some of the more developed, mature neighborhoods, I would say, within that detached range, then things can still be competitive in some cases. We've had clients competing and having to go above asking price or be very tight in conditions. So you want to look specifically at the community and work with your team so that you're zoning in on that as well.
Absolutely. Okay, and then tips for sellers. Now is more than ever very important to price competitively. So there's more on the market. Buyers have options. So overpricing your home's going to get overlooked. If anything, it's just going to help sell somebody else's home if yours is very comparable to theirs and they're at a lower price point. Also, work with a realtor who is understanding these market shifts. Experienced agents, they have to adjust strategy based on inventory and buyer behavior. And that's weekly. Things can change. And staging and photos. You want to make your place stand out, especially when there is a lot on the market in certain communities. You don't want to look the same as everybody else. So if you can do the staging, make sure you're doing professional photos, create a strong first impression. The other thing I would also say for sellers is make sure your house doesn't have an overpowering smell of, those Glade plugins or things like that, because sometimes buyers think that you're trying to hide some other type of smell. I've had that comment quite a bit when we walk in houses that, have an abundance of fragrance. So try to keep everything pleasing for everybody coming through.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And not all smells, not everyone loves the same scents. So if you do have something, you want it to be, I think, light and a little bit more generic for sure than something that's overpowering or that really hits your nose as soon as you walk in the doors.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Those are some really great tips.
One more thing that's really good right now that we're finally getting into spring and summer, is landscaping, right? If you have some nice flowers, now if you have a really nice yard, now's the time to make sure that your yard stands out or your deck stands out if, that's a big feature of your home.
Yes, absolutely. That's really important for sure. Wonderful. Thanks so much, Heather. I think there's a lot of good tips in there and things to consider, definitely with the varying market that we're seeing right now.
Absolutely.
Okay, we are going to hand things over here to Kim. So I'm just going to switch so that I can pin Kim up here. And I will stop sharing my screen. All right. So Kim is our main feature for this evening. And like I mentioned at the beginning, we're so excited to have her. She's a trusted partner with the team. And she's helped countless of our clients throughout a variety of different financing situations. So we're so lucky to have her here this evening speaking to us about different strategies and the topic of buy now or wait.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen here. So give me 1 second. I know we just practiced this, right? So let's hope this works here.
Perfect.
All good? Okay, so let me just do this. So thank you everyone for joining tonight on this beautiful sunny day. I know the topic at hand is timing the market. I know this is something that's been on everyone's mind, whether this is the right time to buy or should I wait, right? Like it's such a burning topic because there's so many things that we hear in the media, the news, politics, rates and stuff. Oh, just wait, rates will drop. And sometimes all of that makes it really confusing to figure out, okay, should I jump in? Should I wait? So that's why tonight on our agenda is I've got a real life example, which is if we were to buy now or wait. So we've got a real life example of if you were to buy last year versus today, what does that opportunity cost look like? So we're going to look at it from like a mortgage perspective, if anything. And then if you are in the market today, we're going to be looking at some strategic mortgage options as well. So if you know that you've got an upcoming renewal or you're going to have to get a mortgage because you're buying a new place, like with all of the ups and downs and the uncertainties of the market, there are a few different strategies that you can implement to kind of get you the best mortgage options out there. Then again, we'll top it off with some market updates just to kind of show you where things are potentially headed, just so you kind of see, get a nice glimpse into the future. And then we'll end it off with some Q&A where I can answer your burning questions. But I think because it's a smaller group, Andrea, I know we talked about it too. If let's say you guys wanted to jump in and ask a question right away, yeah, feel free to do so, right? Or you can wait until the end. So let's start here. So we've got a real life example introducing 132 Rivercrest Crescent Southeast. So this is a home in the highly desirable neighborhood of Riverbend. So for those of you who don't know or may know, Riverbend is a very nice location here, close to some really beautiful parks, good schools, major highways, so it's easy to get from one end to another, shopping malls as well too. This particular home here is fully updated two-story home, 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath with a fully developed basement. So I guess, I mean, show of hands, or you can take yourself off mute. What do you guys think the value is as of March of 2024? So let's just say last year. What do you think this home would go for? I can't see the chat box. So Andrew, you might
I'll
have.
watch. Any guesses? Yeah, put an amount in the chat box or feel free to unmute yourself if you have kind of a guess of what amount do you think this property would sell for, would have sold for last year? Any guesses?
If there's no guesses, that's fine too, right? You guys don't have to be shy. So I'm going to show you the answer anyways. But
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
so in a property like this, oh, let me go here. So for this property here, as of March of last year, the estimated market value is 515,000. And as of March of 2025, so just a few months ago, this same property sold for 537,000. So right off the hop, you can see within 1 year's period, there's an increase of approximately 21,000, which is about 3 to 4% per year, which in my opinion is actually quite conservative. Because alluding back to what Heather was saying and Andrew, you were mentioning too, different pockets, different communities within the city here, there's different type of appreciation. 3 to 4 is quite conservative for what we saw year over year, but there were some communities where it was 7, 8, sometimes they would hit even double digits. So for this example here, 21,000 in just 1 year, just based on that appreciation. But from a mortgage perspective, if let's say you were to buy this property in March 2024, purchase price being 515, doing a 20% down payment of 103,000, your total mortgage is at 412,000, 416. Interest rate at that time was high, right? Like let's just be realistic about it. 1 year ago, rates were at all-time highs, and an average interest rate for like a 3 year term was sitting at about 5.44%. And based on a 25-year amortization, if you bought your home at that time, payments would be about 2,500 a month. Whereas if you were to buy it today or a few months ago, your purchase price, of course, has gone up to 537, which means you'd have to do like a little bit of a higher down payment if you wanted to do the 20% down. So you're going up to 107. And now overall, your total mortgage is much higher, sitting at 429,600. Of course, the one benefit though is yes, interest rates have dropped. So when you take a look at the difference, 1 year ago, a 3 year fixed rate term was coming in at about 5.44. Today, you're sitting at 4.19. So it's over 1% drop, which you would think is a lot. But when we break down the math, even with an amortization period of 25 years, so comparing apples to apples, we're coming in at payments only about $200 short, right? So 2,300 a month. However, breaking it down even further, if you were to buy at that time, 1 year later, automatically you're going to have a lower mortgage balance. You're going to have principal and interest payments of 30,000 versus like a higher mortgage balance of 429. So just from the mortgage standpoint, that's about 25,000 of savings right off the hop. So again, this is considering that we're using a very, very conservative number too, right? Again, I mentioned with this type of property, we only saw about 3 to 4% in appreciation. But again, in certain pockets of town, that number could still be high, even though the market is balanced right now. Andrea, you mentioned as well too, we're still seeing clients compete, right? So if you are in one of those situations where you're wondering, should I buy now or wait? I think it truly does depend on the property type. I know without a doubt, if you're looking at that single family detached, it's competitive, right? I don't think waiting would make much sense. I know some people say, oh, I'll just wait until rates drop. But the reality is, when rates drop, you have to remember there's a bunch of buyers sitting on the sidelines with the same mentality. When rates do drop, just remember that you're going to have more competition. And what is that going to do to the price? The price is going to go up as well. So moving over to my next slide here, now we're going to jump into some strategic mortgage options. So if you're in a situation where you're like, okay, you know what, this is the time for me to buy, or if you've got a mortgage coming up for renewal, whatever the case is, and you've got a mortgage and you're just trying to navigate through this interesting rate environment, there are three strategic mortgage options that maybe you want to look into. Okay, so we're going to talk about the dual flex strategy, the hedge strategy, and the cascade strategy in detail. So with the dual flex strategy, what the strategy is if you have a new mortgage, the idea is to take a variable rate because within a variable rate, the key thing that you want to remember is you can convert it to a fixed rate term at any given time without any type of penalty. So with the dual flex strategy, how it works is within the first 1.5 to 2 years, you would keep your mortgage as a variable rate because when you have a variable rate, it goes hand in hand with Bank of Canada's rate decreases. Bank of Canada has said right now for the next 1.5 to 2 years, they're going to be decreasing rates. So if you have a dual flex strategy, what you want to do is for that 1.5 to 2 years, we just keep it as a variable rate so we can ride out the discounts as they come down. Then, before the end of the second year, this is when we go back to the drawing board to see where the market is. And at that point in time, we can either continue with the variable rate if it's low enough, or because rates have dropped, most likely fixed rates have dropped as well too. And at this point in time, this is when you would be able to lock in for the remainder of the 3 year term into whatever best fixed rates are at that time. So why this works is that it's a strategy where it gives you the maximum savings for all the forecasted rate cuts. And again, like the rate cuts are here, right? I don't believe Bank of Canada has any more room to increase rates. I'll discuss more when we get to the market updates. But with this strategy, like I said, we get to take advantage of those rate cuts. The other thing too is it gives you flexibility because if, let's say, so for whatever reason rates do go up, at least we can kind of adapt quickly and maybe lock it in sooner. Now, it is the benefit, like I said, is the flexibility, right? You've got fixed rates on one hand and also the security with fixed rates whenever you want. And it is something that's suitable in today's uncertain market conditions because you never know, right? One small like tweet or X or whatever, sometimes that shifts the whole market, right? Temporarily, but we do see a shift nonetheless. Now, the next strategy is the hedge strategy. So with the hedge strategy, there are some lenders, and again, not every lender offers this, but there are actually some lenders that will allow you to split your mortgage into multiple segments. So you don't have to have everything all in one segment. You could have a portion that is a fixed rate and a portion that is a variable rate. And just like an investment portfolio, when you have money to invest, you don't want to be putting all of your money into a GIC. That's usually like the worst thing that you could do. You always want to diversify. So you want to have some money that's in a GIC, some that's in mutual funds, maybe some that's in stocks. Like you want to hedge, right? You want to be able to kind of have a little bit of a variety. And this is the same thing with your mortgage. You don't have to have everything all as a fixed rate. You don't have to have it all as a variable. You could have two if you want, right? Or more. Now, with this strategy here, again, whether rates fall or rise or stabilize, again, the strategy just ensures that you are well positioned for any outcome. So an example that we have is, let's say you have a 500K mortgage and it's split equally between a 3 year fixed rate at 4.25 and a 5 year variable rate of 4.5. Under the hedge strategy here, if we've got like the 3 year portion at 250 and the 5 year at the 250, your monthly mortgage payment is about 24.85. And assuming that the rates drop, that will impact your variable rate. So assuming that with the predicted rate drops for the next year, your payment could drop down to 23.45. Now, if you had this as a mortgage, like a regular mortgage, the one downside is if you have like a 3 year fix, even if rates drop, you're going to still be stuck paying the 24.50, right? Because you are locked in. Whereas if you had a variable rate mortgage, well, right now we know that variable rates are slightly higher than fixed rates. There's no doubt about it, just because it hasn't caught up yet to the fixed rates. in that case, when you're taking a 5-year variable, automatically you're going to be paying a premium because your payment's going to be 25.25, right? But of course, if you do take this, assuming the rate drops, it could go down to 23.40. But in essence, though, when you're doing a hedge, you kind of get the best of both worlds. So again, why this works is, like I had mentioned too, having the variable rate portion allows you to capitalize on the potential rate drops, but when you have the fixed rate, it's kind of like a little bit of a safety net in case of anything. It does provide lower initial payments as well too, compared to if you were to take like a standard variable rate right away. But again, like it does protect you in any case, whether rates rise or drop. Like I said, you're shielded and you're protected on all avenues. Now, the next strategy here that we have is the cascade strategy. So this one here, I will be honest, it is a little bit more advanced and it does take a little bit more risk and it does take a little bit more effort. But again, with the risk and effort, it can create a really nice outcome. How the cascade strategy works is it allows you to take a fixed rate and what you can do is you can take advantage of rate reductions, but how you do this is by taking advantage of the prepayment privileges. So when you get a mortgage, every single year you're allowed to do some type of lump sum payment. So this strategy only works if you do have access to like short-term savings and or a HELOC, like a home equity line of credit. So I'll show you an example as to how it works. So say you've got a property that is worth 1 million. Usually, and right now you've got a 500K mortgage on it. And right now the 500K mortgage, you're sitting at a 4.35% interest rate. Your payments per month is about 2480. Usually, when you have a home, you're always allowed to borrow 80% of the value. So in this case here, if you've got a 500K mortgage, you can actually get a home equity line of credit for 300,000. So that's 80% of the $1 million value. Now, with the cascade strategy, what the idea and what the concept looks like is before the first 12 months end, so before 1 year is up, what you want to do is you want to use the home equity line of credit and use that to make a maximum prepayment on the mortgage amount. So with most mortgages, you are allowed to do 20% as a lump sum payment. So 20% on a 500K mortgage means you can do a 100,000 prepayment. So by doing that, what will happen is you will now have a 400K mortgage balance, and now you will have a 100K home equity line of credit balance. Now, after the 12 months, so 12 months in 1 day, what you can do is you can do an additional prepayment. So you can take another 100,000, apply that back towards the mortgage. So now what you're going to have is a 300K mortgage and a 200K home equity line of credit balance. Now, once you have this, so again, you're still borrowing the same amount, right? It's just going to be split into separate segments. When you have this 300K mortgage, because you've paid it down, you can actually go back to the lender and ask them to reduce your payment. So instead of it being 2480 a month, you can drop it down to 1490 a month because it's a smaller mortgage amount. And with this 200,000, what you want to do, because now it's 1 year past, and as I had mentioned, rates are going down, right? Month after month, we're seeing rates go down. Assuming that that rate a year from now is going to be lower, so which it should be, what you would do is you would convert that 200,000 as a second mortgage at today's rates. So assuming the lower rate a year from now is going to be 3.5, in essence, you're going to have the 300,000, which is still your original mortgage, right? The rate is still the same, your payment is lower, but that same balance owing the 200 is now going to be priced at, today's lower rate, which is 3.5. So in essence, you kind of have like a blended mortgage rate of 4.01. Your monthly payment has also dropped from the original 2480 to now 2365. So really by applying this prepayment strategy, you've got interest savings of about 1600 over the 12-month period, right? Just by utilizing the rate decreases. Because again, where we're at right now with rates is in a year's time frame, rates will not be where they are today. They will be lower and it will continue going down for another 1 to 2 years. So when it comes to the cascade strategy, this is something you want to repeat annually, right? Just because rates are going to keep continuing down. So whenever you have time to do the lump sum payment, that is when you would, again, use the HELOC, inject that as a lump sum, and then continue converting. Now, if any of these strategies are too complicated, like there are still the standard strategies, which is, the variable rate is still a good solution out there. I am still a huge, huge fan of it, but again, only if the discount is high. So usually with the variable rate, it's always prime less a certain discount. So I would say usually if you're at zero point 0.5 and higher, like that's kind of like a good number to have in today's market right now. And again, with the variable, remember, we get to ride it out as things come down. So Bank of Canada has openly said they're going to be dropping rates. Now, if you're not comfortable with the variable rate because it can go up and down, the other option is to take a short fixed term rate. So when I say short, 1 to 3 years max. I would not go any longer than that. And the reason for that is if we know that the recession is going to end in about 1 to 2 years time frame, and that's when rates bottom out, you want to time it accordingly so that way at your renewal, you get to renew into lower rates. Of course, you're going to see out there that the 5 year fixed rate is going to be super, super low. But just know that if you take the 5 year fixed rate in 2 years time frame when rates are low, it's going to be costly for you to get out of that mortgage. So right now, I do think if you want a fixed rate, you'd want to look into something short term, right? Nothing long term. But just be mindful too. The one thing that a lot of consumers don't know is when rates go down, your penalty goes up. So for any home that you are buying or any mortgage renewal coming up, just make sure that if you are picking a fixed rate, just make sure that you keep that home for that period of time. Because if you need to break the mortgage, the penalty will be substantially higher. Now, the next one would be if you really need cash flow, you could always just get a home equity line of credit product, right? Where it's a fully pure line of credit and it is fully open, which is nice, and it's interest only payments. So again, your payments will be smaller. So with a home equity line of credit, just know that you always have the option of converting it to a mortgage term later down the road. This could be really good if you think that rates are really high right now and your cash flow is impacted. Maybe just take the line of credit to ride it out for a bit, and as rates drop, you can kind of keep an eye and lock it in accordingly. But really, though, when it comes to my final thoughts, when it comes to interest rates, I always say marry the home and date the rate, okay? The home is the most important piece because you can't just return it if you don't like it. Whereas the rates, it's short term, right? It's nothing that you're going to be stuck with for the next 30 years or so. No, that's not true, right? There is a very short term. So if the home is right, marry the home. The rate, you just want to date it temporarily, and then once you're done dating, you can find another one, right? So again, it's with the way that rates are right now, keep it light, keep it flexible. That's kind of what I've been suggesting to a lot of clients. So, heading into some market updates right now, like where we're at, and this is a snapshot of the big six. Even the big six is saying from now to the end of this year, don't lock in too soon. Okay. And the reason why is across the board, I can see that majority of banks are predicting at least another zero point 0.5 drop in interest rates, at least. Okay. Now, if you lock in too early, like that could mean that you're overpaying when rates do decrease. So if you have like a variable rate mortgage right now, I would say just continue to ride it out because there's still more drops to come. The next meeting is going to be in June, and we're expecting another quarter point drop at that point in time. But if the big six are also predicting it, they're probably onto something, right? Of course, sometimes the predictions aren't always accurate, but if it's across the board saying that there should be some type of decrease, I think it's a safe bet to assume so. Now, what about tariffs? I know tariffs has been a big topic on everyone's mind. Like, how is this going to impact my interest rate? And I get this question quite a bit too. When it comes to the whole tariffs talk, inflation will go up naturally, right? Like this is the outcome of it. And really, with Bank of Canada, they really will only have two paths, which is should I just keep rates as is or should I increase it slightly? But then again, we'll be into a deeper recession. And at that point in time, which we've lived through, whenever we're in that deep recession, Bank of Canada has no choice but to drop rates just to stimulate the economy again. But what they're truly saying right now is that it will be case by case, and the forecast can shift quickly, right? Just depending on the developing news. But The overall outcome, though, is if, let's say, the inflation gets up too high, I don't see them increasing it by any means. I just think that what they would do is just keep rates as is, right? Like I can't foresee them increasing it. I think if anything, they're just not going to decrease it and just let everything slide a little bit and reassess again the next meeting. So that's kind of what we're seeing. Again, too, things do change, they can change, but all in all, though, I just can't see it going up. I think if anything, it might just flatline. But really, the signs, though, especially with last month's economic reports and such, I do believe that in June we should see another quarter point drop at that point in time. So yes, that's brings me to the last step here, which is the Q&A stage here. Again, happy to book like a one-to-one complimentary review. Again, would love to help you guys out here. I hope that this was a little bit useful. I know, like I said, there was a lot of complex stuff, but I think all in all, though, when it comes to timing the market, don't be afraid of the whole interest rate conversation. Again, things are going down, right? But what's most important is that yes, rates are going down, but when it comes to the value of homes, if there's more people coming in, you're going to be computing, right? At the end of the day, if you find, I do think that because the market is also a little bit more balanced as well too, take advantage of this versus waiting for the next rate drop, right? Because it's going to be on everyone's mind. Like there's a lot of people saying, I'm just going to wait, I'm just going to wait. But if you wait, that home that you're looking at today, as you can see, it could be worth much more if you waited like a few more months. So you win some and you lose some. I think it's better to kind of win on actually getting the home rather than the interest rate.
That was so great. Thank you so much, Kim. There was a lot of really valuable information in there. You packed lots in, which was so good. And we will have the recording of this. So if you're wanting to kind of go back and look at some of those options, or of course, like Kim said, book a one-on-one consultation to dive into it a little bit deeper. But I loved, of course, marry the home or the property, date the rate. That's so important. I find so many clients just get stuck on that rate, but like you said, it really is short term. And in general real estate, we want to be looking more at the long term, and that rate is just a small part of it along the way. And I think it was so valuable to see the different strategies because I think a lot of people are, and a lot of consumers, like you said, kind of look at, okay, well, my option is variable or fixed, but there's creative strategies that you can use in between. So I think that was so great.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is just that I know cash flow is very important as well too. And I think, just from seeing all the examples, right? There are ways to kind of bring down the cash flow. Like there's a lot of creative strategies to do that. And then you get to capitalize as things drop as well too. So don't think that it's an end all be all, like this is the rate and that's it, right? There's tons of strategies surrounding that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we wanted to open it up if there are any questions again, because we kind of have a small group. If you have any burning questions for Kim, now is a really great time to ask them. Um, so if you have anything, feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat box as well. Um, while we're waiting, I'll ask maybe a couple of things, Kim. I'm just curious, like is there anything from your end that is helpful or that you're kind of having to remind clients or that would be helpful for them to provide you with as they're kind of prepping or going through the process?
So one thing is if you are active in the market, I always recommend you gotta get pre-approved, okay? Like that's the biggest thing that I can, and I'm sure Andrew, you probably agree as well too, right? In this kind of market, even though it's balanced, but there is still some competition, like be prepared, right? Don't go in without any type of pre-approval because if we need to act fast, like and again, if we need to have those tight timelines, it's better that you're pre-approved so you know exactly what you do qualify for, right? I think that is very important to be aware of. But yeah, don't shop blindly. And on top of that as well too, is that this is the busy season for many lenders. So really, if we're waiting last minute, you put an offer and now we're getting the approval in place, like just know that lender time turnaround times are very slow right now. Like we've got some lenders where they're taking about 3 to 4 business days just to review your file, right? But if at least you're pre-approved, kind of gives you that security that, okay, you know what, my financing should be okay. So just be prepared. It is busy season, so don't think that, yeah, things happen really fast. No, like it's busy on that end.
Absolutely. That's so important. Jason, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Just with regarding the variable rate mortgages, if you have one on a property and that you're thinking of selling, is there any penalty like there is on a fixed rate to break if you're selling the property?
Good question. Yeah. So, Jason, when it comes to the penalties, variable rate will have a 3 months interest penalty, right? So, it is an easier pill to swallow than if you were to have a fixed rate. Because usually with the fixed rate, it's going to be based on something called interest rate differential. And in layman terms, what that looks like is they're going to see how much time you have left on the term, and what the current rates are doing. And essentially, in layman terms, it's Jason, if you were to break up with me, your lender, and you had 3 years left on your 5 year term, within 3 years, this is how much interest I would have accumulated from you. That's essentially what you need to pay to me to break, right? Like kind of that's what it would look like on the fixed rate. But when it's variable, just 3 months interest. Now, if you want to avoid any type of penalty, this is when you want to renew into an open variable. With an open variable, there is no penalty at all, but your interest rate is very high though, right? Right now it's anywhere between like the 8 to 9s with major banks.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not quite familiar. What is an open variable?
Yeah, so there's two different types of mortgage types, right? So it's either we have a closed mortgage or we have an open mortgage. With a closed mortgage, that can be a closed fixed rate or a closed variable rate, and that's like the more common one. With those types of mortgages, anytime you want to break it, there will be a penalty if it's not at the end of the term. Whereas with an open mortgage, that is a mortgage where you can pay off at any time, no penalty. But the risk with that is a higher interest rate.
Okay, gotcha. Good to know.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I think like if your mortgage is coming up for renewal and you know you want to sell, I would renew into like an open term if you can, but run those numbers though, right? Because if we've seen some cases where sometimes renewing into an open mortgage doesn't make sense if it's going to take you, let's say, 4 months to sell your home. So, for an example, I know the condo market here in Calgary, like I said, it can be kind of slow, right? And you can't expect like a quick sale unless you're priced right. In a case where you have a condo and let's say it might take you 4 months or so to sell your home, sometimes going into that 8 or 9% open variable rate mortgage doesn't make sense. It's almost better for you to take like a closed variable and pay that 3 months interest penalty.
Right, right. Okay. Good to know.
Mm.
Um, I have a question for Andrea, a little off topic of mortgages.
Sure, Jason.
Regarding solar panels, do they increase the value? Is there a demand for them in the Calgary market?
Yeah, you know what, there's been a lot of discussion about this lately, and we've had this question. I think for someone that wants solar panels to have a property that has them already installed, then that's an amazing thing. And they're probably going to see more value in that property because of it. But for someone who doesn't necessarily want the solar power or doesn't maybe have the information about it, it won't. So when we're looking at things for a CMA, I would say often we're not necessarily adding value onto what we're going to be listing the property at because of the solar panels, because it's very subjective in terms of if a buyer is going to want them, then that's a bonus to that property. They're going to love it. They may be searching specifically for those properties. But for a buyer who doesn't, it won't really add any value for them. So I think it's more of a personal choice. If you're going to be living in this property and you would want to invest in solar because that's something that's important to you and you see the cost savings or whatever it may be, then I think absolutely go for it. If it's like you're planning to sell in a couple of months and you want to add solar panels to add value, I would say it's probably not worth it and or makes sense to do so.
Right. Okay. Good
Yeah,
to know. Thank you. Appreciate that.
no problem. Any other questions for Kim or I about the market or mortgages? Of course, yeah, we're so lucky to have Kim with us to answer questions this evening. So if you have anything, um, happy to go through it. All right. Quiet group this evening, but again, if you if you have anything else or if it comes up after, if you're watching this recording, please don't hesitate to reach out to Kim. I will put her contact information in the description, so you have it there. And then I know she did have it on the previous slides as well. But Kim, thank you so much for your time and joining us this evening. We're really lucky to be able to work with you, and we really value the relationship. And I think it's so important to have your investor focused team. So Kim is an investor focused mortgage broker. Like I said, she works with first time home buyers to seasoned investors and everything in between. But when you're an investor in particular, it's so important to have that team that's investor focused, and Kim has investment properties of her own, so really understands and can dive into the different scenarios, because there is so much that I think not the average consumer isn't aware of, just like we saw this evening. So
Mhm. For sure. Thank you for having me, guys. But yeah, just reach out anytime. Happy to discuss anything. Like I said, I like sharing knowledge, right? There's no gatekeeping here.
we so appreciate that. Wonderful. Well, I hope that everyone has a great evening. Enjoy. There's still definitely a little bit of sunshine out there. It's so nice. The days are getting longer. And thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a great evening.
You too.